Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, brothers and sisters. Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. And welcome to another ImanNest video. Today, inshallah, I would like to share a few words on one of the great personalities that we have had in our great Islamic legacy and history. This man was one of the close companions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, about whom the Prophet sallallahu says, every nation has a trustworthy person, and the trustworthy person of my ummah, of my nation, is this man. He was known as a trustworthy person by the Prophet ﷺ and of this ummah. And he was also one of those who was given the glad tidings. He was promised paradise while he was still alive. This was none other than the great Sahabi, Ubaidah Aamir ibn al-Jarrah radiyallahu anhu. He accepted Islam in the earliest times in Makkah. He was called to Islam by the great Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiyallahu anhu, and he responded to that call. And throughout his life, he showed just why the Prophet ﷺ made him or promised him promised him Jannah, one of those 10 people, the Ashratul Mubashirin bil Jannah. Why was this man, Abu Ubaidah radiyallahu anhu, such a fantastic man? I would like to share with us today a few incidents that happened during his life. And these incidents show to us just how the characteristics, the personality was of this great man, so that we can take these characteristics or the lessons from these characteristics and see how we can put them into our lives too. So it's a practical look at the life of this great man with the view to see how we can benefit from his life and put it into ours. The first incident that I would like to mention was during the time of the Battle of Uhud radiyallahu anhu, where the Prophet ﷺ, he was being so fiercely attacked by the Quraysh and the Mushrikun. And the Prophet ﷺ, he got hit with an arrow, and the armor on his face, the rings in the armor pierced into his cheek, and the Prophet ﷺ, he was bleeding. And Abu Ubaidah radiyallahu anhu, what did he do? He saw the hurt or the pain that the Prophet ﷺ was facing. So he came to the aid of the Prophet ﷺ, and he wanted to remove those 2 chains of armor that had pierced into his cheek. But he had nothing with him to be able to take it out. So what did he do? Radiyallahu anhu, may Allah be pleased with him. He bit those pieces of armor with his teeth, and he pulled them out with his teeth. And with each bite that he took, he lost a tooth. And during that time, he lost two teeth, because there were 2 chains of armor that had pierced the Prophet's cheek. Subhanallah. Look at the sacrifice that this man gave for the well-being of the Prophet ﷺ. Not only for the well-being of the Prophet ﷺ himself, but the well-being of the message that this man ﷺ had brought. Putting the wellness and the benefit and the protection of the Prophet ﷺ and his honor before even his own well-being. This was one of the characteristics of this great man, Abu Ubaidah radiyallahu anhu. One of the characteristics which led him to become one of the most prominent Sahaba radiyallahu anhu, one of the people to whom other people looked up to. Another incident, a second incident that happened during the time of the Prophet ﷺ was an incident where, while the Prophet ﷺ was in Medina, a delegation came to him from outside, from the southern parts of Arabia, and they asked the Prophet ﷺ to send to them a person to collect their zakah who was a trustworthy person. They asked the Prophet ﷺ for him to send to them somebody who was trustworthy, for him to be able to collect from them the wealth that they wanted to pay to the Prophet ﷺ. So when the Sahaba asked or they heard about this request that was given by the people, everybody wanted to be that person nominated by the Prophet ﷺ. Why? Because if they were nominated by him, it would be a testification by the Prophet ﷺ that this man, he is a trustworthy man. Who was the one who was appointed by the Prophet ﷺ to accompany these people. It was none other than Abu Ubaidah radiallahu anhu, the trustworthy man of this ummah. My dear brothers and sisters, if we have a look, this was a great characteristic of this man, having the people's trust, being trustworthy. These days, trust and the returning of the amana to the people, it is something which is taken very lightly. And for some people in our community, some people in society, it is almost non-existent. Where, when you entrust something to them, you might lend them something, but when it gets returned back to you, it is in a condition where it is almost useless, nobody can use it after that. They take it in a good condition, but when they return it back, it gets returned in a condition that they themselves would not even like their own property to become. Subhanallah. Having the trust and a trustworthy characteristic, it is one of the pinnacles, one of the best of our characteristics. The Prophet ﷺ says, لا يؤمن أحدكم حتى يحب لأخيه ما يحب لنفسه. In an authentic hadith recorded in Sahih Bukhari, the Prophet ﷺ says, none of you truly believes until he loves for his brother what he loves for himself. Just by application of this hadith, we can see just the role, just how great the role that trust plays in our community. Each one of us likes that for us, our property, the way that we are treated by people, all of these to be in a comforting, well manner. At the same time, this is how we behave in respect to other people. When we borrow something from somebody, we borrow their car, we borrow their mobile phone, we stay in their house for a short period of time while they are away. Then when we return it back to them, we return it back not only in a way that it was left with us, but even better, even in a better manner than it was given to us. This is how we behave. This is how we act. This is the legacy that Abu Ubaidah radiallahu anhu, he left with us, the trustworthy man of this ummah. I would like to mention lastly the leadership characteristics of this great man. Abu Ubaidah radiallahu anhu, he was a very selfless man. During the time of Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, he had appointed Abu Ubaidah radiallahu anhu to be Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, he had appointed Khalid ibn Walid radiallahu anhu to be the commander-in-chief of the army fighting the Persians and the Romans. At one point in time, Abu Ubaidah radiallahu anhu, he was commanded by Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu to serve under Khalid ibn Walid. Khalid ibn Walid, he was a great soldier, he was a great man, he was a great leader, a great strategist as well. But he, radiallahu anhu, he had accepted Islam in the later times when the Prophet ﷺ was in Medina. Whereas Abu Ubaidah had a proven track record by having accepted Islam in the earliest times in Mecca. So there was a great significant differential in status and in honor between Abu Ubaidah radiallahu anhu and Khalid ibn Walid radiallahu anhu. Yet, when Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anhu asked Khalid ibn Walid, or commanded that Khalid ibn Walid be the commander-in-chief of all of the army, Abu Ubaidah radiallahu anhu, he didn't have any second thoughts about serving under Khalid ibn Walid. He was very selfless. He was not there for the power. He was not there for the greed and the hunger, for the status and all of these kind of things. But rather, he was there to serve in any capacity for which the deen of Islam needed. Now, when Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu passed away, and Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anhu, he assumed the Khilafah, he assumed the control of the Muslim country. Then he directed that Khalid ibn Walid be stepped down and Abu Ubaidah become the commander-in-chief of the army. When he had given this directive, it was in the middle of one of the most significant battles that the Muslims were fighting against the Romans. So, at that point in time, while the Muslims were in the thick of the battle, Abu Ubaidah radiallahu anhu gets this letter from Umar ibn al-Khattab, directing him to take over the leadership and the commandership of the army, and advising him that Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu had passed away. What did Abu Ubaidah do? did he, in the middle of the battle, tell Khalid ibn Walid, step down, I am now the commander-in-chief? No, subhanallah. Look at how he behaved. Look at how he acted. He waited until Khalid ibn Walid had executed all of his battle plans and strategies. After he had taken all of the steps and the battle was finished. And after everything had been settled and the dust had settled and everything was finished, then Abu Ubaidah then goes and informs Khalid ibn Walid, one, of the death of Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, and two, of his direction to assume control of the army. Had he wanted that power, had he sought that status, he would have done it right in the middle of the battlefield. But he saw the bigger picture. He saw that if he was to tell them at that moment in time what was going to happen, how the morale of the Muslims would diminish and it would turn into dust, and how they would not have been able to cope with the news of the death of Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anhu. So these are the things that we can take from this great man. His wisdom, his farasa, his insight, and also his selflessness, and his focus on the betterment of the whole society as a whole. Subhanallah. Lastly, another aspect of his leadership. When Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu, he was on his deathbed, and he was contemplating who to appoint as his Khalifa, as his successor after him. He said about Abu Ubaidah radiallahu anhu, he said about him, and I'll mention a quote that Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu said. He says on his deathbed, if Abu Ubaidah radiallahu anhu was alive, I would have chosen him for this position. And if Allah asked me, I would have said, I chose for this position of leadership the trustworthy person of this ummah, the trustworthy person of Allah and His Messenger, who is Abu Ubaidah Aamir ibn al-Jarrah radiallahu anhu. Subhanallah. This is the significance of this man, the greatness of this man. Where Umar, the great Umar radiallahu anhu, he said on his deathbed, if Abu Ubaidah was alive, I would have chosen this man, the trustworthy person of Allah and His Messenger, to assume control and leadership of our nation, of the ummah. Why? Because just like how he is a trustworthy person of this ummah, he would behave, he would act in a trustworthy person, dealing with the people and dealing with their affairs. Subhanallah. The greatness of this great man, the legacy that he left behind, his selflessness, his willingness to sacrifice his own welfare for the betterment of the community, and also his great leadership characteristics and the trust that he showed in returning that to people, and the trust that he earned from the people because of his great behavior with them. My dear brothers and sisters, subhanallah, these are some great characteristics that we can take from the life of this great man. Jazakumullah khair. Wa sallallahu ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.